Etc. hides, the 15th day of March 44 BC in the city of Rome, a metropolis hovering around 1 million people. Rome has essentially become the capital of the whole Mediterranean world, for it started with humble upbringings as a kingdom turned republic in Latium, and accelerated its growth to encompass all of Italy and then the entire city. Back in Rome, the Senate is preparing to convene again. For years it has been divided between the Optimates, the wealthy conservative members, and the Populares, the populist members seeking reforms. One particularly influential populist is named Gaius Julius Caesar, the conqueror of Gaul. He defeated the Optimate armies in the civil war and declared himself dictator for life. More than ever, the senators are petrified by the thought of an autocratic Roman king, and for many senators, this populist general embodies that well. On this day, however, history is to make an abrupt turn, a turn which will still receive our attention for thousands of years after. As Caesar enters the room with the Senate, a large group of senators suddenly fell upon the dictator, stabbing him 23 times. The mob includes Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, the latter thought to be a good friend with Caesar. They're passionately fighting for his life. Seeing Brutus abandon him made him realize all was hopeless, and there on the floor Caesar dies, thus creating one of the most famous power vacuums in all of human history.
The death of Julius Caesar was supposed to bring about restoration of the Republic. Many senators wanted this, including Marcus Tullius Cicero, a famed orator at the time. However, they didn't quite think about what would happen after Caesar died. For many veterans and many common people loved Caesar, and they hated the people who killed him.
Last year, the other consul with Caesar was Marcus Antonius, better known to us as Mark Antony. He led the instigation against Caesar's killers, even though he initially made a compromise with them that kept Caesar's laws in place in exchange for amnesty for them. Antony's eulogy for Caesar whipped up the Roman masses into a Caesar-loving frenzy. Brutus and Cassius were compelled to leave Rome to the eastern provinces. Antony also had to leave Rome, and left to govern the strategically chosen province of Cisalpine Gaul. His departure was due to the fervent criticisms of Cicero, as well as an unexpected competitor challenging his authority.
Only 19, a boy by the name of Gaius Octavius Tyrannus, who was staying in the town of Apollonia, decided to come back to Italy, where he was gaining much support from veterans and people.
And why was that?
Well, Caesar's will, among other things, posthumously recognized this great nephew of his as his adoptive heir. Octavius was not exactly the most manly man of his time, but he possessed great intellect. He was prone to getting ill, especially on campaigns, but two childhood friends of his, Maecenas and Agrippa, helped him to govern. From this point on, we shall refer to him as Octavian for short.
Antony was very cross that someone as previously irrelevant as Octavian all of a sudden had a large rapport of people supporting him. Even Cicero, who detested Caesar as a tyrant, was more fond of his adoptive son, Octavian, than he was of the dreadful Antony.
With Cicero and the Senate's sanction, Octavian cunningly managed to win over a plethora of people and began to assemble an army. His forces even came to include a couple of Antony's own legions.
The Battle of Mutina in northern Italy saw the victory of the forces of Octavian and the Senate against Antony's army. Antony retreated, but he aligned himself with friendly armies in Gaul and Spain.
In 43 BC, the two warring sides finally decided to come to a truce, for they still had to fight the liberators out to the east. The first business that they had to attend to was that they had to get rid of all of their opposition in Rome. They proscribed many in Rome, including Cicero. Especially Cicero, because he was conspiring with Brutus and Cassius. Antony insisted upon killing him.
With internal threats quelled, Antony and Octavian confronted Cassius and Brutus near the town of Philippi in June 42 BC. Antony's leadership defeated the Republicans, and their two leaders committed suicide.
In October 40 BC, the three leading Caesareans met in Brundisium to discuss a semi-permanent partition of Roman territories. The treaty made there would include Mark Antony, Caesar Octavian, and another named Lepidus. The three of them would comprise the Second Triumvirate. Octavian got Gaul, Spain, and Italy. Antony got Greece, Anatolia, and the Levant.
Lepidus got Africa.
The reason why it was called the Second Triumvirate is because there was one before that. It had Julius Caesar and other populares. They initially cooperated, however they had a falling out. But I digress. Marcus Aemilius Lepidus was the least powerful of the three.
To solidify the peace between the headbutting Antony and Octavian, a political marriage was arranged. Antony's first wife, Fulvia, had died, and so the older sister of Octavian, Octavia, was married to Antony. It forged a sign of unity that helped to assure that peace would be kept between these two discordant men.
The Treaty of Brundisium allowed for Antony to focus on Parthia, while Octavian was allowed to focus on quelling the last Republican forces.
The general who lost to Caesar in that civil war we mentioned was Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus. One of his sons, the Republican Sextus Pompey, commanded a large and powerful navy, and he dressed in a blue toga that symbolized Neptune. Based in Sicily, his pirates had blockaded Rome for a time until 39 BC.
The people of Rome were not satisfied with Octavian's command. The blockade prevented crucial grain imports, and also he planned an invasion without Antony's approval.
This Agrippa character of Octavian's was a military genius, and eagerly took on the task of building a whole new armada. He built a large canal between a lake and the Mediterranean, so he could source wood for ships. And by the next year he had a whole fleet ready.
Lepidus landed his troops, and Octavian was to also land on other Sicilian fronts. A storm seriously delayed his fleet, however, and normally campaigns were not conducted around wintertime.
Still, Octavian was desperate to save his image in the eyes of the Roman people, and so he dangerously chose to keep up the invasion. Caesarean army swiftly took over Sicily, and in September, Agrippa decisively prevailed over Sextus near Naulochus. With the rest of his men surrendering, Sextus fled to the east and was later killed.
Lepidus, whose armies had occupied most of Sicily, ordered Octavian to evacuate his troops out of there. Octavian refused and instead successfully bribed his whole army.
Octavian was merciful to the vulnerable triumvir and allowed for Lepidus to go into a lenient exile. With Lepidus out of power by 36 BC, Octavian was in full control of the west and Antony of the east with the Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra. The Battle of Naulochus was a huge PR victory for Octavian, and after serving in several other campaigns in Illyricum, as well as building projects in Rome, he had the support of the people behind him. Antony, however, had a failed military campaign in Parthia, and instead of doing what Octavian was doing, he was spending his time partying in the east. Many of his allies were disenfranchised by his behavior. Octavian decided to send Octavia to Egypt. By that point, Antony and Cleopatra were living together and had 3 children already, in addition to Caesar's son Caesarean. Antony refused to see her, even though she continued caring for his other children back in Rome. Antony's insulting rejection of loving Octavia in favor of a foreign queen disgusted many Romans.
Then the smoking gun arrived, the donations of Alexandria.
What were the donations of Alexandria?
Why, the donations of Alexandria were promises of land announced by Antony to the children of Cleopatra.
Caesarean would be made co-ruler of Egypt, Cyprus, and Coele with his mother Cleopatra. Their eldest son would be given the unconquered areas of Armenia and Parthia. Their daughter got Cyrenaica, and their youngest son received Cilicia, Syria, and Phoenicia. This distribution of Roman land to Cleopatra's children was unacceptable, and Octavian used it as a reason for war.
Antony and Cleopatra decided to station their forces at Actium, at the mouth of the Gulf of Ambracia. Octavian and Agrippa set up the camp and besieged the Gulf. Disease and the low morale led to high levels of desertion for Antony's men. Desperate for time, Antony ordered his fleet to leave the Gulf.
In the ensuing Battle of Actium, Cleopatra's Egyptian fleet escaped along with Antony himself. Thanks to adroit Agrippa, however, most of Antony's fleet surrendered to Octavian. From there on, Antony's military resistance crumbled away. Octavian landed forces in Egypt the next year and besieged the opulent capital of Alexandria. Hopeless, Mark Antony committed suicide, and in his dying hours he was raised up into a window, where Cleopatra tried to calm her lover as he died. She opened the gates, and threatened with humiliation as a prisoner in Rome, Cleopatra went the way of Antony. Egypt was annexed to Rome, Caesarean was hunted down and killed, and Octavia adopted Antony's children as her own. With sole control over the entire Roman world, Octavian, whose name changed again in 27 BC to Augustus, set about a glorious revival. He died in his Italian villa in 14 AD, and by that point his empire was larger and more prosperous than ever. He was the ultimate champion of the Second Triumvirate, the first Roman emperor of a realm which would last for hundreds of years to come.